Here's the hair comb I'm going to be using. Now this is a hair comb that I've used several times. So as you can see, the paint, because this is a porous surface, the plastic, some of that paint does absorb in, but if you use alcohol, you can remove the flower you've been working on, the previous flower. So I'm gonna be working on my flower on top of this one, and I'm just gonna try to paint the flower petals over the areas where you see that I've already worked on. So basically what I do is I just change the colors of my flowers. For this project, I'm going to be using a flat tip brush. This one I'm going to be using is a number 4. The two colors of paint I'm going to be using is this vivid violet one by Americana and this white one by Apple Barrel called Snow White. For my leaves, I'm going to be using this green one by Apple Barrel called Leaf Green and this yellow one by Faber-Castell. I'm going to begin by loading my brush. I'm going to be dipping half of my brush in the pink and then the other half over the white area, and now I'm just going to press and bring it towards one direction, my brush. I'm just making sure basically that my brush is fully loaded. Apart from that, also that my brush is nice and flat. This really helps flatten it out nicely. So I'm just going through the same areas, and I'm gonna go in one more time. There, you also get a really nice mixture of the two colors when you make sure that you load your brush completely. I'm tilting my brush coming in sideways, and I'm just going to place it flat and just little by little begin to swoosh, swoosh up, sort of like in a V, like that. I'm going to move my brush coming in sideways the opposite way, and I'm going to swoosh, swoosh, coming in down at an angle. And there's my first flower petal. Now you can go over this if you want it to be a little bit darker. So basically all I'm going to do is go in and load my brush one more time. Now I'm going to begin working on the second flower petal. So I'm going to start in this area again with my brush tilted sideways because I want the side of my flower petal to be a little bit lower. So I'm just little by little, and the tripod really gets in the way here, but I'm going up at an angle again. Now I'm going to tilt my brush coming in sideways so that I can little by little begin swooshing my brush little by little, zigzagging it back down. And there's my second flower petal. So I'm just starting here sideways, and I'm just going to start swooshing, swooshing up, coming up at an angle. And you know what's great about working on these types of projects? That it really helps you practice your technique. It just really helps out a lot. Now I'm going to begin working on my petal number 4, doing the same thing, coming in at an angle, going upwards. Now I'm going to tilt my brush the opposite way and begin going downwards. And this is just one way of making a flower. There's so many techniques out there for the one stroke, but this one's just the one that I chose. So I'm coming in at an angle again, swooshing, coming up, creating that V shape. Now I'm going to tilt my brush the opposite way, starting at the tip and little by little bringing it down, making sure that it's nice and thick from the bottom, forming that V shape. What I'm going to be doing to this particular flower, I'm probably going to be keeping this design. So I'm just going to go a little bit over to the side and paint a tinier flower petal. Now I'm going to do the same exact thing over the opposite side, just dabbing, 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 coming up a little bit higher, going back down a little bit lower. Now over the center area, I'm going to do the same exact thing, higher, higher, and dabbing back down lower. And I'm going to do the same thing to the opposite side. So I'm going to dab, dab, going a little bit higher, dab, dab, going a little bit lower, and do the same thing on the opposite side. So I'm going to dab, dab, coming higher, dab, dab, coming lower. And you can definitely go in a second time to these flower petals just so you can make sure that they're nice and dark. You could even go in a third time. Just to make sure that the vibrancy of the color is there, the one you want. For the leaves, I'm basically going to be loading my brush the same exact way, except using the green and the yellow colors. Now I have the green color over the top area, the yellow over the bottom, and I'm basically going to use the same exact technique where I'm bringing it up to an angle and then just starting in that little tip, going back down, just moving my brush sideways till I get to the bottom part. And there's one of my little green leaves. For my second green leaf, I'm going to make sure that the green is always on top, and I'm just doing the same thing, dabbing, coming at an angle. And I hope the glare of the hair comb isn't blinding exactly what I'm doing. There's my second flower petal with the green on top. I'm going to do the same exact thing, and each time I'm going in with the green color on top. So see how I'm just tilting my brush little by little, coming in sideways to finish that little green leaf. So I'm going to do one more over this side. Over this area is going to be where I'm going to be adding my last green leaf over this side and just dabbing. And I'm basically using the same exact technique I used for my flower petals. Over my opposite side, I'm going to be doing the same exact thing, just dragging my brush, tapping, coming in sideways, and just tilting my brush. I'm going to make one a little bit lower, making sure every time I go in, I'm starting with the green on top and loading my brush in between each of the leaves. Next, using a thin tip brush, I'm going to be dipping into the green color. I'm just bringing my brush in sideways, making sure that it's nice and loaded from the tip. I'm going to glide it a little bit through my little foam plate. That way I have the exact tip I want. It's nice and thinned out. And I'm just going to make a thin line connecting to each of the green leaves over this area. So there I have my hair comb nice and finished. I'm going to be adding top coat. This is the first time I do this, so it's totally experimental just because I want to keep this design because I made a video on it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go over the design little by little with my top coat, and that should seal it in nicely. The top coat dried up nice and smooth. What I'm going to be doing now is optional. I'm going to be adding some crystals to certain areas. I'm going to begin by adding glue to the center of the flower. I'm just using regular crazy glue. Now I'm just going to take my crystals and I'm just going to lay them flat over the glue.